international reputation. Mr Speaker, I thoroughly support this bill and commend it to the House.
Kia ora, Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Shane Jones.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. And let me note, sir, that I heard this evening a commentary provided by yourself and Mr Clayton Cosgrove about a rugby game in Dunedin. And in the unlikely event that you are not made the future Speaker, you may have a career in Dunedin narrating rugby. There were some fine players, however, sir, in the team, not the least of which is the Richie McCaw of New Zealand's parliamentary rugby team politics, Mr Damien O'Connor. Anyhow, sir, let me come back to this bill. Labour supports this bill, but beneath the words of this bill, sir, really is a debate that's gathering traction. And it's a debate about monetarism. And it's a debate about the orthodoxy which has prevailed in New Zealand since the mid to late 80s. And sir, it was pushed as a consequence of Thatcherism and Reaganomics. And it took root here, and it found institutional expression in our Reserve Bank, and it is now the subject of a very public tussle between the two teams that will lead the next government. Now, sir, I have no compunction whatsoever, unlike our colleagues from the Greens, in supporting this piece of legislation, because I feel, sir, you can't pick and choose which international accords you want to commit your country to. You can, sir, take on with a level of religious fervour certain environmental accords, but then sniff at things to do, sir, with financial security. So I have no compunction whatsoever in supporting this, knowing, yes, you do rely on the government of the day, just as Winston Peters in his time, sir, intervened on our behalf, provided funding at the time of the Asian crisis back in the mid to late 90s. But I want to come back to this, what underlies this bill. It's a debate about monetarism. Now, sir, a monetarist will insist that we run an austere, hawk-like fiscal policy. And so they will insist that nothing must be done to manipulate the supply of money that might lead to a growth in the value of assets or inflation, which is just too much money chasing too few goods. The other countervailing view, sir, is that from time to time, pump priming, using the inflationary target and letting it float a bit, sir, lifts a wrecked ship off a reef. So, as we go forward over the next 2 or 3 years, there's going to be a genuine debate. How much of the public will actually be interested in it, that remains to be seen. But, sir, it's a legitimate, intellectual, demanding political debate that has gathered momentum. And I salute my colleagues that have managed to get it up as an agenda item. Now, I accept on the day of deniable plausibility, etc., for the Prime Minister and the Deputy Leader of the National Party, they've got other things to worry about, but this debate is not going to go away. So, over the last week, as the IMF prepares for its annual meeting, a debate has broken out between the Reserve Bank in Germany and the IMF. Now, what's at the centre of that debate, sir? What's at the centre of that debate is that the IMF have consistently said you cannot lift the wreckage of the economy and the stranded ship unless, sir, you actually take a Keynesian approach, unless you move away from this hawkage, austerity, and actually generate cash flow. So people have got money to buy goods and services. Firms then have the confidence to invest and start to actually employ people. Now, so it's rather interesting that that debate at far more elevated levels than what we're talking about is gathering momentum, because the IMF realises, sir, that there are risks as money is extended to countries, etc., who have gotten the proverbial. But without that type of intervention, sir, you cannot leave a society or an economy to implode on itself and not be surprised that more nefarious forces associated with violence, mayhem, terrorism, drugs, destruction and death, fascism, communism, totalitarianism, don't occupy that space. So, sir, a modern economy, and when I think about it, how we've approached this bill and we approach the role of the IMF, actually sees a large, and some of us it may be larger than others, for me I see a very large role for the private sector in any economy. But when you are in the midst of a long, protracted period, sir, of depression, sort of basically trees dying as a consequence of actually having enough fiscal liquid in them, you've got to intervene. And one way of intervening, sir, is actually enable the whole monetary settings to be recalibrated. And why not? No generation, just as no religion, just as no institution can enjoy long-term life if it fossilises or allows itself to desiccate. So that's why, sir, the debate which underlies this relatively straightforward regulatory response is a very good debate. Now, sir, it'll be said from that side of the House that really what you're talking about is making New Zealanders poorer. Well, sir, I can tell you that I was chair of New Zealand's largest fishing export company when the dollar got to 39 and 46. Now, sir, we know that we probably wanted it at the 10-year average of a 55 cents, and I should imagine it's over 60-odd now in terms of a 10-year average, but it's a fiction, and it's a self-serving, quite destructive approach, sir, unfortunately, which still persists in the likes of the person I like to debate with occasionally, Don Brash, that we're destroying the country's wealth. So, because when you have these debates, some lose, some gain. Inflation actually helps those, sir, who want to trade assets. Inflation actually, sir, can penalise those people on fixed incomes, etc. But no economy at any given point in time has all winners. And so the fact that we are pushing from this side of the House something that is now actually being amplified by the current leader of the IMF, speaks to the prescience, etc., of our two senior spokesmen, etc., not the least of which he's had the good sense to wander over and check out the thinking of senior economists, senior policymakers, and only to learn, sir, that it's time for change in our country. What can you do in maintaining growth and jobs where you are crippled by an excessively high exchange rate? What solution or what remedy is coming from the other side of the House? I'll tell you what it is, sir. It's a hawkish approach, a very mean-spirited, I might be charitable and say for some of them a flinty approach, to shrink the size of the fiscal contribution from the government to the economy and to society. But so you can only do that so much, and then the whole economy starts to wither. You can only do that if you're actually taking out, sir, of circulation funds and resources. Where's it going to come from? Because the jobs, the investment at this stage are not coming from enough firms. Go and ask a firm, as I did yesterday, sir, several of them up in Marsden Point, and they will tell you, oh, if we only had a quality or a quantity of commitment and a quality of leadership from the government of the day, many of the regions of the country would get up and get going again. They are being crippled. They're struggling to keep ahead, both of creditors, both, sir, of their banking relationships at a time where the banks actually have a lot of money, because the dollar, sir, the dollar is squashing confidence, squashing energy, and we're right to call some parts of the country in a depression because people are depressed. They're depressed about the absence of any hope, absence of a tone of a positive stewardship from the current government. So, sir, have no doubt, as we move to the next election, underlying what the IMF represents is a deeper debate. What direction are we going to take our country? We're not going to take our country, sir, while we watch ongoing unemployment, the destruction of jobs, the inevitable loss of too much talent to Australia, and stuck, sir, arguing about these shibboleths that are said from the other side of the House. Now, some may actually understand them. Whether they believe them, they are ideas, sir, that are no longer relevant. They are ideas that no longer generate the results that will sustain New Zealand families in a quality of life and a volume of income that makes life meaningful in Aotearoa, which is why we're watching so many of them go to Australia. So we will support this bill, but in particular we support more the debate that's both overdue and a debate that will be outstanding, because it will pinpoint what we as a government in the future will do to revive the fortunes of our economy by driving the export sector. Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Speaker.
I call Maggie Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak to the International Finance Agreement Amendment Bill. This is a